They fenced off my access road with an 8-foot steel barrier. $15,000 of chain link with privacy slats still locked tight, blocking the only route between my 85-acre ranch and the outside world. HOA President Brad Morrison stood on the other side, expensive boots planted in the dust, arms crossed like he'd already won. Your easement's disputed, Ms. Chen. This gate stays closed until you sell. Or you can take the 40-mile mountain detour. Red dust kicked up. Metal gleamed. My ranch, the land Uncle Raymond left me, cut off in one calculated afternoon. But while Brad was busy playing power games, he forgot one critical detail. I'd already inherited one quiet, strategic asset. The one piece of property he never checked. The emergency fire gate that controls the only secondary exit for his entire 120-home subdivision. Every insurance policy, every home sale, every family's coverage, all dependent on my key. Brad locked me out. Just wait until his residents discover I control their access. Worst developer power play? But let me start from the beginning. Before we dive into, I'd love to know where you're listening from today. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons for more interesting stories just like this. I saw the fence when I was still a quarter-mile out. 8 feet tall. Steel posts, chain link with privacy slats, stretched across the only road connecting my ranch to the outside world. I slowed my truck to a crawl, staring at it through the dust on my windshield. This wasn't here 3 hours ago when I'd driven into town for feed supplies. Now it blocked the entire width of Red Mesa Road, the single access route between my 85-acre cattle ranch and State Highway 89. I pulled up to the fence and got out. 2 signs, zip tied to the chain link at eye level. Private property, no trespassing Sunset Ridge. He states HOA. I stood there in the Arizona heat, hands on my hips, feeling my pulse climb. Brad Morrison had finally done it. He'd cut me off. My name is Sarah Chen. I'm 38 years old, and I've been running the Red Mesa Ranch since my Uncle Raymond died and left it to me 5 years ago. 85 acres of high desert grassland in Coconino County, Arizona. 60 head of cattle. A modest income from beef sales and the occasional agritourism event. Ranch tours. Farm-to-table dinners for city people wanting to pretend they were cowboys for a weekend. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Uncle Raymond had bought the land in 1985. 145 acres back then. He'd sold off 60 acres to a developer in 1987 to pay down debt, keeping the best part, the 85 acres with senior water rights and direct access to Red Mesa Aquifer. The sale had come with one critical condition: a recorded easement guaranteeing perpetual access across the sold land to reach the remaining 85 acres. The easement was filed with Coconino County in 1987. Ordered, legal, permanent, perpetual vehicular access for all owners of the remaining 85 acres via Red Mesa Road across Parcel 14C. For 38 years, that easement had been uncontested. Until 3 months ago, Brad Morrison showed up at my ranch on a Saturday morning in early June, driving a black Ram 3500 with Morrison Development logos on the doors. He was in his mid-50s, sun-scorched skin, expensive boots that had never seen actual ranch work. He smiled like a man who was used to getting what he wanted. Ms. Chen, I'm Brad Morrison. I built the Sunset Ridge subdivision on the land adjacent to yours. I'd like to make you an offer. I invited him onto the porch, offered him water. Listened, your ranch is beautiful, but it's landlocked. No direct highway access except through the easement across my subdivision. That creates complications. Maintenance issues. Liability concerns. I'm prepared to offer you $2.3 million for the full 85 acres. Cash. 30-day close? I set my water down carefully. Mr. Morrison, my ranch was appraised last year at $4.8 million. Senior water rights alone are worth $1.2 million in this county. I'm not selling. His smile tightened. Ms. Chen, that appraisal assumes stable access, but access easements can be complicated. Road maintenance, gate disputes, insurance liability. The value of landlocked property is speculative at best. My offer reflects the actual risk. My easement is recorded and legal. It's been in place since 1987. There's no risk. Easements can be challenged. Not this one. Brad stood, adjusting his hat. Ms. Chen, I've been developing land in Arizona for 20 years. I know how these things work. You're sitting on property you can't easily sell, can't develop, and can't access without my cooperation. $2.3 million is a generous offer. I'd encourage you to think carefully. I have. The answer's no. He walked to his truck, paused before getting in. You'll regret this. That easement won't protect you forever. He drove off, kicking up dust. I watched him go, uneasy but firm. The easement was legal. Recorded. Permanent. He couldn't touch it. Except now. 3 months later, he'd built a fence across it. I pulled out my phone and took photos. The fence. The signs. The survey pins marking the edge of my easement. Clearly visible, 50 feet behind the fence line. Brad hadn't just blocked my access. He'd built the fence on my easement, on the legally protected right-of-way that gave me access to my property. This wasn't a boundary dispute. This was an illegal obstruction. I called the Coconino County Roads Department. County Roads, this is dispatch. Hi, my name is Sarah Chen. I own property on Red Mesa Road, parcel 22A. Someone just installed a fence across my recorded access easement. It's blocking the only road to my ranch. Do you have documentation of the easement? Yes. It's recorded with the county, filed in 1987. Parcel 14C to parcel 22A, perpetual vehicular access. And you're saying someone built a fence across it? Yes. 8-foot chain link. Installed sometime in the past 3 hours? Who installed it? Sunset Ridge Estates HOA. The president is Brad Morrison. Typing sounds. Long pause. Ma'am, I see the easement in our system. You're correct. It's a recorded right-of-way. If someone's obstructed it, that's a code violation. You'll need to file a formal complaint. We'll investigate and issue a notice to remove the obstruction. How long does that take? Investigation typically takes 10 to 14 business days. If the obstruction is confirmed, we'll issue a removal order with a 30-day compliance deadline. 30 days? I can't access my ranch for a month? You can file for an emergency injunction with the county court if you need faster resolution, but our process is 10 to 14 days for investigation, then 30 days for compliance. I hung up. Brad was smart. He knew the county's timeline. He knew I'd have to either wait weeks for bureaucratic relief or spend thousands on an emergency court hearing. He was betting I'd panic. Sell cheap just to end the headache. I walked up to the fence and rattled it. Solid. Professional installation. Probably cost $15,000 for this section alone. Brad had planned this. He'd waited 3 months after I refused his offer. Let me think the issue was settled. Then struck. I turned around, drove back toward town, and took the only alternate route to my ranch. A 40-mile detour through the mountains on Forest Service roads. Washboard gravel. 15 miles per hour in some sections. 90 minutes instead of 12. I finally pulled into my ranch at 4:30 p.m., exhausted and furious. My phone rang as I was unloading feed bags. Unknown number. Local area code. I answered. Ms. Chen, this is Brad Morrison. I wanted to give you a courtesy call. The Sunset Ridge HOA installed a security fence today, across the subdivision's private roads. I understand that may affect your access. If you'd like to discuss a solution, I'm available. I took a breath, forced my voice steady. Brad, you just fenced off a recorded easement. That's illegal. The county will order you to remove it. Miss Chen, the HOA has a right to control access through our private subdivision. We're not blocking public roads. We're securing our community. If that creates inconvenience for you, I'm happy to discuss alternative arrangements. Alternative arrangements? I'm prepared to renew my offer, $2.3 million. Or, if you'd prefer, we can negotiate an access license. Annual fee, liability insurance, maintenance cost sharing. Your choice. My choice is for you to remove the illegal fence. I don't think you understand your position, Miss Chen. You're landlocked? No access except through my subdivision. You can file complaints with the county, but that'll take weeks. In the meantime, you're stuck on that ranch with no way in or out except a 40-mile mountain detour. How long do you think you can sustain that? As long as it takes. We'll see. He hung up. I stood in my driveway, staring at the darkening sky over the painted desert. Brad thought he'd trapped me, cut me off from civilization, forced me into a corner where my only options were sell cheap or go broke fighting him. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that I held leverage he hadn't considered. 3 years ago, when Brad was building Sunset Ridge Estates, the county fire marshal required 2 emergency exits for any subdivision over 100 homes. Brad's subdivision had 120 homes. The main entrance ran through the highway. The secondary emergency exit, the one required by fire code to keep the subdivision legal and insurable, ran through an old fire road. A fire road that cut directly through my ranch? The county had installed a gate on my property in 22 decade, with Uncle Raymond's permission, to provide that emergency access. A heavy steel gate with an industrial lock. 1 key. And I had it. Brad had just fenced off my access to the outside world. But he'd forgotten that I controlled his. He wanted to play leverage games? Fine. Let's see who blinked first. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking about Brad's voice on the phone. The confidence, the certainty that he'd backed me into a corner. You're landlocked. No access except through my subdivision. He was right about the access. Wrong about the leverage. At 6 a.m., I made coffee and opened my laptop. Time to learn everything I could about Brad Morrison and Sunset Ridge Estates. Morrison Development's website was slick. Professional photos of luxury homes against red rock backdrops. Testimonials from satisfied buyers. A biography page showing Brad standing in front of a half-built subdivision, arms crossed, looking like a man who'd built an empire. Morrison Development, building Arizona's future since 2004 inches, 21 years in business. 14 completed subdivisions across Coconino and Yavapai counties. Over 800 homes built. Sunset Ridge Estates was his crown jewel. Built between March 2022 and November 2023. 120 homes on 60 acres. The same 60 acres Uncle Raymond had sold in 1987. Prices ranged from $600,000 for a 3-bedroom ranch to $900,000 for a 5-bedroom with casita and pool. I did the math. $84 million in gross sales, assuming an average price of $700,000 per home. Even after construction costs, Brad had probably cleared $15. 20 million. No wonder he wanted my ranch. Another 85 acres adjacent to Sunset Ridge would let him build Phase 2. Another 100 homes, another $80 million in sales. But my land wasn't for sale, and now Brad was trying to force me out. At 9 a.m., I drove into Flagstaff and went straight to the Coconino County Planning and Zoning Office. I'd like to review the planning files for Sunset Ridge Estates. Parcel 14C, the clerk, a woman in her 60s named Donna, pulled the files from the archive room. 3 thick binders. I sat at a table and started reading. Site plans, environmental impact studies, traffic analysis, water and sewer approvals. And then, in binder 2, I found it. Coconino County Fire Marshal, emergency egress requirements dated January 14th, 2022. Pursuant to County Code 19403, all residential subdivisions containing more than 100 dwelling units must provide a minimum of 2 emergency vehicle access points. Primary access via State Highway 89 is approved. Secondary emergency access must be established via alternate route to ensure evacuation capability in the event of wildfire, flood, or other emergency. Brad's proposed secondary access? Old Fire Road, running north through adjacent private property, my ranch, connecting to County Road 7 approximately 8 miles from the subdivision. Fire Marshal's conditional approval dated February 3, 2022. Secondary emergency access via Old Fire Road is approved, contingent upon Morrison Development securing written easement from property owner, Parcel 22A, Raymond Chen, and installation of gated access point with keys provided to Coconino County Fire Department and Sunset Ridge OA. I flipped to the next document. Easement agreement, emergency access signed by Uncle Raymond on March 12, 2022, 6 weeks before he died. The agreement granted Morrison Development and Sunset Ridge HOA the right to use the Old Fire Road crossing my property for emergency egress purposes only. Terms: gate to be installed at property boundary, Morrison Development to cover installation costs. Access restricted to emergency vehicles and evacuation scenarios. No routine vehicular traffic permitted. Property owner, Raymond Chen and successors retains ownership and control of gate. Uncle Raymond had signed it, but there was no transfer of the gate key documented anywhere in the file. Just a handwritten note in the margin, in Uncle Raymond's shaky handwriting. Key remains with property owner. Gate access granted for emergencies per agreement. I drove straight home and walked to the north boundary of my property. The old fire road was barely visible. 2 dirt tracks through the scrub grass, overgrown in places but still passable. It had been cut decades ago for wildfire access, back when the Forest Service managed controlled burns in the area. The road entered my property from the northeast, cut diagonally across 3 acres and exited at the northwest corner where it connected to County Road 7. At the exit point, right on my property line, stood the gate. Heavy steel frame, 12 feet wide, painted forest green. Industrial padlock thick as my thumb. A metal sign bolted to the gate, emergency access only, Sunset Ridge Estates unauthorized. Use prohibited. I pulled the key from my pocket, the one I'd found in Uncle Raymond's desk after he died, labeled Firegate in his handwriting. I'd never thought much about it. Just another key in a drawer full of keys for gates, sheds, and equipment locks. But now it meant something. I slid the key into the lock. Turned. The lock opened smoothly. I swung the gate open, checked the road beyond. It was clear, well maintained by the county. 8 miles of graded dirt road connecting to the state highway on the far side of the ridge. This was Sunset Ridge's emergency exit, the only secondary egress for 120 homes, required by county fire code, required by homeowner insurance policies. And I controlled it. I called my attorney, Miguel Rodriguez, from the driveway. Miguel had handled Uncle Raymond's estate transfer and helped me navigate the early months of ranch ownership. He specialized in property law and knew Coconino County Code better than anyone. Miguel, I need advice. Brad Morrison fenced off my easement yesterday, but I just discovered something. The emergency access gate for his subdivision runs through my property, and I have the only key. Silence on the other end. Then, Sarah, are you telling me Brad Morrison blocked your access without realizing you control his emergency egress? Yes. Miguel laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A full, genuine laugh. Sarah, that's the dumbest thing I've heard all year. What was he thinking? I don't think he was. Can you pull the county fire code requirements for subdivisions? Hold on. I heard typing. A minute passed. Okay. County Code 19403. Subdivisions over 100 homes require 2 emergency access points. Both must be functional and accessible at all times. If secondary access is lost, the subdivision is non-compliant. Insurance carriers are required to cancel policies on non-compliant properties. So if I revoke access to the gate, every home in Sunset Ridge loses insurance immediately. And without insurance, no one can sell. No lender will finance a mortgage on an uninsurable home. Property values collapse overnight. Can Brad get around it? Build a different exit? Not easily. The fire marshal approved his subdivision based on that specific emergency route. If he wants to change it, he'd need to submit a new site plan, get environmental approval, build the new road, and get fire marshal sign-off. That's 6 months minimum, maybe a year. And in the meantime, his subdivision is illegal. I leaned against my truck, processing. Miguel, Brad blocked my easement because he thought I was trapped. But he's the one who's trapped. Exactly. The easement Brad blocked is legally protected. We can get an injunction forcing him to remove the fence within a few weeks. But Sarah, you control his fire access. Without that gate, every home in his subdivision is uninsurable. You have nuclear leverage. What do I do? Normally, I'd say file for an injunction and let the court handle it. But given the circumstances, you could wait. See if Brad figures out what he's done. Let him come to you. And if he doesn't, then you remind him. But Sarah, be careful. This kind of leverage can backfire. If 120 families lose their insurance because of a dispute between you and Brad, you'll be the villain in their eyes, even if you're legally right. I'm not trying to hurt them. I'm trying to stop Brad from stealing my ranch. I know. Just think about how you want to play this. I spent the rest of the day working the ranch, but my mind kept drifting back to the gate. Brad had blocked my primary access. True, but I had a 40-mile detour. Inconvenient, expensive in time and fuel, but functional. Brad's subdivision had no backup if I revoked gate access. No alternate emergency exit? No way to comply with fire code? No way to keep 120 homes insurable. Brad's leverage. Inconvenience. My leverage. Extinction. I could have called Miguel back that night and filed for an emergency injunction. Could have had the fence removed within a week. But I had a better idea. Let Brad sit with his fence for a few days. Let him think he'd won. And then let him discover what he'd actually done. Because the Coconino County Fire Marshal conducted annual inspections of all subdivisions with emergency egress requirements. Sunset Ridge's inspection was scheduled for next week. I'd checked the county's public calendar that afternoon. October 2nd, 6 days away. The fire marshal would test the emergency gate. And when he couldn't open it, when he discovered the property owner had the only key and no formal key transfer agreement existed, he'd flag the subdivision as non-compliant. And then Brad would realize he'd trapped himself. I didn't need to sue. I didn't need to fight. I just needed to wait and hold the key. I did nothing. For 3 days, I went about my work, fed the cattle, repaired fence line on the south pasture, took the 40-mile detour into town twice for supplies, and once for a vet visit. Brad's fence stayed up. My easement stayed blocked. And I didn't call him. Didn't threaten. Didn't mention the gate. I just waited. Miguel called on day 2. Sarah, do you want me to file the injunction? Not yet. The longer we wait, the more it looks like you're okay with the fence. I'm not okay with it. But I'm not in a hurry either. What are you waiting for? The fire marshal inspection. It's scheduled for October 2nd. Miguel was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed again. You're going to let Brad figure it out the hard way. He wanted to play games. I'm letting him. October 2nd arrived on a Thursday. I was fixing a water trough in the east pasture when I saw the white Coconino County Fire Department truck drive past on the old fire road, heading toward the gate. I didn't follow. Didn't need to. I knew what was about to happen. The call came at 11:47 a.m. Unknown number. Flagstaff area code? I let it ring 3 times before answering. Miss Chen, this is Deputy Fire Marshal Tom Browning with Coconino County. I'm conducting the annual fire code compliance inspection for Sunset Ridge Estates. I'm currently at the emergency egress gate on your property, and I'm unable to access it. Do you have the key? Yes. Can you provide access so I can complete the inspection? What's the inspection for? We test all secondary emergency exits annually to ensure they're functional and accessible. The subdivision's fire code compliance depends on this gate being operational. And if it's not, then the subdivision is non-compliant, and we'll have to issue a notice to the HOA and notify insurance carriers. Deputy Browning, that gate is on my property. My uncle granted emergency access to the subdivision in 2022, but the key was never transferred. It's still in my possession. Long pause. Ms. Chen, are you saying the HOA doesn't have a key to their own emergency exit? That's correct. Does the HOA have your permission to access the gate in an emergency? The original agreement granted access for emergencies, but no one has ever asked me for the key. And as of 3 days ago, the HOA president illegally blocked my access easement with a fence, so I'm not inclined to cooperate until that's resolved. Another pause. I could hear papers rustling. Ms. Chen, I understand there's a property dispute, but this is a public safety issue. If the gate isn't accessible, 120 homes are at risk in the event of an emergency evacuation. I agree. The HOA should have made sure they had access before building 120 homes dependent on a gate they don't control. Can you meet me here and open the gate so I can complete the inspection? No. Miss Chen, Deputy Browning, I'm not refusing emergency access. If there's a fire, a flood, or any actual emergency, I'll open that gate immediately. But a routine inspection isn't an emergency. And I'm not providing access for non-emergency purposes until the HOA removes the illegal fence blocking my property. Silence. Then, I'll note that in my report. He hung up. I went back to fixing the water trough. The fire marshal's report was filed with the county on October 3rd. Miguel called me that afternoon. Sarah, the fire marshal just submitted his report. It's public record. You want to hear it? Go ahead. Secondary emergency egress gate located on private property. Parcel 22A. Gate is functional but inaccessible. Property owner states HOA does not possess gate key, and access is currently denied due to ongoing property dispute. Subdivision is not in compliance with County Code 19403. Insurance carriers must be notified. Compliance required within 30 days, or subdivision subject to penalties and potential occupancy restrictions. Occupancy restrictions? Means the county can legally prevent people from living there if the fire code isn't met. They won't actually do that, too extreme, but it puts pressure on Brad to fix it fast. And the insurance carriers? They'll be notified within 48 hours. Every homeowner in Sunset Ridge will get a letter saying their policy may be canceled if compliance isn't restored within 30 days. How long until that happens? Letters will go out early next week. Then the panic starts. The first letter arrived on October 8th. I know because Tom Wynn, one of the Sunset Ridge homeowners I'd met at a county planning meeting 2 years ago, called me that evening. "Sarah, did you hear about the insurance thing?" "What insurance thing?" "Every homeowner in Sunset Ridge just got a letter from our insurance company. Says our policies might be canceled because the subdivision isn't in compliance with fire code." "Something about an emergency exit gate? Do you know anything about that?" "The gate's on my property, Tom. It's been there since 2000. The fire marshal tested it last week and discovered the HOA doesn't have a key." "I do?" "Wait, you control the gate?" "Yes." "So, can you just give them the key?" "I could, but Brad Morrison fenced off my access easement 6 days ago. Until he removes that fence, I'm not giving him anything." Tom was silent for a long moment. "Sarah, I didn't know about the fence. Most of us didn't. But if 120 families lose their home insurance because of a fight between you and Brad, Tom, I'm not the one who put your insurance at risk. Brad built a subdivision dependent on emergency access through my property, then attacked me when I wouldn't sell my ranch to him. He did this. Not me. I get that. But Sarah, people are panicking. We have a meeting tomorrow night. It's going to be ugly. I'm sure it will." The emergency HOA meeting was held on October 9th at 7 p.m. in the Sunset Ridge Community Center. I wasn't invited, but Tom called me afterward and told me everything. 93 residents attended. Standing room only. The HOA manager, a man named Eric Delgado, opened the meeting by reading the fire marshal's report and the insurance letters. "What does this mean?" someone shouted from the back. "It means," Eric said carefully, "that our subdivision is currently not in compliance with county fire code. We have 30 days to restore compliance or our insurance policies will be canceled." "Why aren't we in compliance?" "The secondary emergency exit, the gate on the north side of the subdivision, runs through private property owned by Sarah Chen. The gate is locked, and Miss Chen controls the only key. So get the key from her." Eric glanced at Brad, sitting in the front row with his arms crossed. "It's complicated." "What's complicated?" another resident demanded. "Just ask her for the key." Brad stood up. His face was red, his jaw tight. "Sarah Chen is refusing to cooperate. She's using the gate as leverage in a property dispute." "What property dispute?" Brad hesitated. "She owns the ranch adjacent to our subdivision. I made her an offer to purchase it. She refused. Now she's retaliating." "Retaliating how?" someone asked. A woman in the third row, I later learned her name was Karen Wu, stood up. "I did some research. Brad's company installed a fence 6 days ago blocking Sarah Chen's legal access to her ranch. She has a recorded easement through our subdivision. Brad blocked it illegally. That's why she won't give us the key." The room erupted. "You blocked her access? Is that even legal?" "Why would you do that?" Brad's voice rose. "The HOA has a right to control access through our subdivision. Sarah Chen was using our roads without permission." "She has an easement," Karen interrupted. "I pulled the county records. It's been recorded since 1987. She has a legal right to use that road. You can't block it." "Why didn't anyone tell us about this?" another resident shouted. Eric tried to restore order. "Everyone please. Why is our insurance being canceled because Brad picked a fight with a neighbor?" Brad pointed at the crowd. "This isn't about me. This is about Sarah Chen holding 120 families hostage over a personal grudge. You fenced off her road, Karen shot back. You started this! The meeting devolved into shouting. Tom said it took Eric 20 minutes to regain control. Finally, a motion was made. Remove Brad as HOA president and appoint an interim board to negotiate with Sarah Chen. The vote was called. 87 residents voted yes, 12 voted no. Brad walked out before the results were announced. Brad called me at 9:43 p.m. that night. I almost didn't answer, but I wanted to hear what he'd say. Sarah, we need to discuss the fire access gate. Oh, the gate on my property? The one you needed access to? This is a safety issue. You can't block emergency access? I'm not blocking anything, Brad. The gate works fine. I just haven't given you the key. Sarah, 120 families are about to lose their home insurance because of you. No, because of you. You blocked my easement. You built a subdivision dependent on a gate you don't control. You picked this fight. Now you're dealing with the consequences. What do you want? Remove the fence. Restore my access. Pay for the 3 weeks of 40-mile detours I've had to take. How much? $15,000. Plus a written apology admitting you illegally blocked my easement? That's extortion. No, Brad. That's the cost of the key. You have 20 days left before insurance cancellations become permanent. I suggest you think fast. I hung up. And I smiled. Brad had 30 days to fix the problem he'd created. But I wasn't giving him the key. Not for free. Not until he learned that leverage cuts both ways. Brad tried 3 different approaches over the next 3 weeks. None of them worked. Approach 1. Legal threat. The letter arrived on October 12th, 4 days after the emergency HOA meeting. Law offices of Patterson and Hale. Flagstaff. 2 pages, formal legal letterhead, addressed to me. Dear Miss Chen, this firm represents Sunset Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. We are writing regarding your refusal to provide access to the emergency egress gate located on your property. Under Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 331807, and the Doctrine of Emergency Necessity, property owners cannot unreasonably withhold access to emergency infrastructure that serves public safety interests. The gate in question provides the only secondary emergency exit for 120 homes. Your refusal to provide key access endangers lives and violates public policy. We demand that you immediately provide a gate key to the HOA. Failure to do so within five business days will result in legal action, including a motion for emergency injunctive relief and a claim for damages resulting from your obstruction of emergency access. I scanned the letter and emailed it to Miguel. He called me 10 minutes later, laughing. Sarah, this is the weakest legal threat I've seen in years. Why? Because the emergency necessity doctrine applies when someone's blocking access during an actual emergency, like refusing to let firefighters through your property during a wildfire. It doesn't apply to routine access or hypothetical emergencies. And Brad's own development agreement specifies that the gate is on your property and you control access. He can't demand the key now just because it's inconvenient. What do I do? I'll respond. Don't worry. Miguel's response was short and devastating. Dear Mr. Patterson, your client installed the emergency gate on my client's property in 2002, pursuant to a voluntary agreement. That agreement granted emergency access but did not transfer ownership or control of the gate. My client retains full legal authority over the gate, including the right to deny access for non-emergency purposes. Your client recently installed an illegal fence blocking my client's recorded easement, causing significant damages. Until that fence is removed and damages are paid, my client has no obligation to provide non-emergency access to the gate. The emergency necessity doctrine does not apply to hypothetical emergencies. If an actual emergency occurs, my client will provide immediate access. Your threatened litigation is baseless and would likely result in sanctions. Regards, Miguel Rodriguez, Esquire. Brad's attorney didn't respond. Approach 2. County pressure on October 16th. I got a call from the Coconino County Attorney's Office. Ms. Chen, this is Linda Marsh, Assistant County Attorney. I'm calling regarding the emergency egress gate dispute at Sunset Ridge Estates. Mr. Morrison has filed a complaint alleging that your refusal to provide gate access is endangering public safety. Can you provide your side of the story? I explained everything. The easement Brad had blocked. The gate on my property. The fact that the key had never been transferred to the HOA. Linda listened without interrupting. Miss Chen, do you intend to provide access if there's an actual emergency? Absolutely. If there's a fire, a flood, or any real emergency, I'll open that gate immediately. But Brad Morrison blocked my legal access to my ranch. I'm not providing routine access to his subdivision until he fixes what he broke. Understood. Let me review the files and get back to you. She called back 2 days later. Ms. Chen, I've reviewed the county records. Your easement is valid and legally protected. Mr. Morrison's fence is an illegal obstruction. As for the gate, it's on your property, and you have the right to control access. The fire marshal's report doesn't require you to provide a key to the HOA. It requires the HOA to ensure emergency egress is functional. That's Mr. Morrison's responsibility, not yours. So the county won't force me to give them the key? No, you're not violating any county code. Mr. Morrison built a subdivision dependent on access through your property without securing permanent rights to that access. That's his problem to solve. Brad had tried to use the county to pressure me. It backfired. Approach 3. Homeowner outcry. On October 21st, day 19 of the 30-day deadline, 15 residents from Sunset Ridge showed up at my ranch. I was in the barn when I heard the vehicles. 3 trucks, 2 SUVs, parked in a line along my driveway. I walked out to meet them. A man in his 40s wearing a Sunset Ridge polo shirt stepped forward. Miss Chen, I'm Derek Paulson. We're here representing the homeowners of Sunset Ridge. We need to talk about the gate. I'm listening. Our insurance is being canceled in 11 days. Our property values are dropping. 2 home sales have already fallen through because buyers can't get financing on uninsurable homes. You're holding 120 families hostage over a property dispute with Brad Morrison. I crossed my arms. I'm not holding anyone hostage. Brad blocked my legal access road. I'm not giving him access through my property until he fixes it. A woman behind Derek spoke up. Do you have kids, Miss Chen? No, we do. 3 families here have young children. If there's a wildfire and we can't evacuate because you won't open the gate, those kids could die. You're willing to risk that over a fence? If there's a wildfire, I'll open the gate. I've said that from the beginning. This isn't about emergencies. This is about Brad Morrison thinking he can bully me into selling my ranch. Derek's voice rose. Brad said you're extorting the HOA, that you're demanding $15,000 and a written apology just to give us a key. Brad illegally blocked my road. I've had to take a 40-mile detour every time I leave my ranch for 3 weeks. Gas, time, wear on my truck, that's $3,000 in damages so far. The $15,000 covers that plus legal fees and compensation for the harassment. And yes, I want a written apology admitting he broke the law. That's not extortion. That's consequences. You're going to let our kids lose their home insurance over your pride? I'm not the one who put your insurance at risk. Brad built a subdivision dependent on a gate he doesn't control, then attacked the person who does. You want someone to blame? Talk to him. Another man stepped forward, older, angrier. You're a selfish, greedy. Careful, I said quietly. You're on my property. And I've been recording this conversation. I held up my phone. The group went silent. Derek tried to recover. Miss Chen, we're just asking you to be reasonable. We're not your enemies. Brad is. Then why are you here instead of at his house demanding he remove the fence? No answer. You're here because Brad sent you. Because he's losing and he's desperate and he thinks you can pressure me into giving up. But I'm not giving up. Remove the fence, pay the damages, apologize in writing, and I'll hand over the key the same day. Until then, you're trespassing. Leave. They left. The insurance deadline was now 7 days away. Home sales in Sunset Ridge were frozen. 2 escrows had collapsed when buyers learned the subdivision was non-compliant. A 3rd buyer pulled out after reading the fire marshal's report. Property values were starting to drop. One home listed at $750,000 got an offer for $680,000, contingent on fire code compliance being restored. The panic was spreading. On October 23rd, day 23, the HOA held another emergency meeting. Tom Wynn called me afterward. Sarah, it was brutal. 90 people showed up. They're furious. Half of them want to sue Brad personally for endangering their homes. The other half want to pay you whatever you're asking and move on. What did Brad say? He tried to blame you. Said you were being unreasonable, that $15,000 was extortion, that you were holding families hostage. Karen Wu stood up and destroyed him. She said Brad blocked your road illegally, that the county confirmed it, and that the whole mess was his fault. Then someone motioned to remove him as president. Did it pass? 87-12. Same vote as last time. But Brad's already been removed, so it was symbolic. The new interim board is meeting tomorrow to figure out what to do. Are they going to pay? I think so. But Brad's still fighting. He doesn't want to admit he was wrong. Brad called me on October 25th, day 2005. 5 days until insurance cancellations became permanent. Sarah, Brad, what do you want? You know what I want. Remove the fence. Restore my access. Pay $15,000 in damages? Written apology admitting you illegally blocked my easement. How much in damages? $15,000. That's extortion. No, Brad. That's the price of the key. You illegally blocked my road. You cost me 3 weeks of 40-mile detours, legal fees, and time I'll never get back. You built a subdivision dependent on a gate you don't control, then tried to force me to sell my ranch by cutting off my access. You gambled. You lost. Now pay up. The HOA doesn't have $15,000. Then take out a loan. Assess the homeowners. Sell your truck? I don't care. You have 5 days. Sarah, 120 families are in this mess because of you. Not me. Remove the fence, pay the damages, and apologize. Or watch your subdivision become uninsurable and worthless. Your choice. I hung up. Brad had 2 choices. Swallow his pride, remove the fence, pay the damages, and get the key. Or refuse, let the insurance cancellations go through, and watch 120 homes lose coverage and property values collapse. Simple decision. But Brad Morrison wasn't a simple man. He was proud, stubborn, used to winning, and he just spent 3 weeks losing to a cattle rancher with a key. So instead of choosing option 1 or option 2, Brad chose option 3. He tried to take the key by force, and that's when everything went nuclear. I found the cut lock on October 27th, lying in the dirt next to the gate. I'd driven out to check the fence line on the north pasture, and decided to walk the fire road while I was there. The cattle had been restless the night before. Something had spooked them, and I wanted to make sure the perimeter was secure. The gate came into view as I crested the small rise. It was closed. But something was wrong. The padlock I'd installed wasn't there. I walked closer. A new lock hung from the gate latch. Industrial grade, brass-bodied, different brand than mine. My lock, the one Uncle Raymond had used for years, was on the ground, cut clean through with bolt cutters. I picked it up, feeling the rage build in my chest. Someone had destroyed my lock. Cut it off my gate. On my property. I pulled out my phone and called the Coconino County Sheriff's Office. Deputy Jason Miller arrived 40 minutes later. I met him at the gate and showed him the cut lock. Ma'am, do you know who did this? Brad Morrison, president of the Sunset Ridge HOA. He needed access to this gate for fire code compliance. I refused to give him the key, so he cut my lock and installed his own. Deputy Miller examined the cut lock, took photos of the new lock, and wrote notes. Miss Chen, this is destruction of property and criminal trespass. Do you want to press charges? Yes. Do you have proof Mr. Morrison did this? He's the only one with motive. The fire marshal inspection failed, because I control the only key to this gate. Brad's been trying to force me to give him access for 3 weeks. When I refused, he took it. I'll write up the report and contact Mr. Morrison for a statement. But Miss Chen, if you want the lock removed, you'll need a locksmith or bolt cutters. We can't remove it for you. I don't want it removed. I want it documented. Because I'm installing a second gate, and when Brad's lock doesn't work anymore, I want a record of why. Deputy Miller looked at me carefully. Ma'am, are you saying you're going to block the fire road again? I'm saying I'm installing a gate on my property. It's my land. I can put up as many gates as I want. This is going to escalate. Brad escalated it when he cut my lock. I called a contractor that afternoon, a man named Paul Hernandez who built fencing for me 2 years ago. Paul, I need a gate. Heavy duty, 12 feet wide, same specs as a cattle gate, but stronger. Industrial lock, custom key. 1 copy only. I need it installed 50 feet inside my property line, on the north boundary, blocking the old fire road. Sarah, that's the fire road for the subdivision, right? Yes. You sure you want to do this? Positive. How fast can you install it? I can have materials tomorrow, install the day after. 2 days total. Do it. The gate went up on October 29th. Heavy steel frame, powder-coated black, bolted into concrete footings, sunk 4 feet deep, industrial padlock, $8,000 total cost, including labor. I had Paul install a new sign next to it. Private property. No trespassing, no emergency accesses. Granted violators will be prosecuted. The fire road was blocked again, 50 feet inside my property line, nowhere near the county right-of-way. Completely legal, completely impassable without my permission. The fire marshal's reinspection happened on October 29th, same day the second gate went up. Deputy Fire Marshal Tom Browning returned to test the emergency egress, now that Brad had installed his own lock on the original gate. I wasn't there, but Tom knew and called me that evening and told me what happened. Browning drove up the fire road from the subdivision side, reached the first gate, the one Brad had relocked, and opened it with the key the HOA had provided. Then he drove 50 feet forward and found my second gate. Locked. He got out of his truck, walked up to it, and read the sign. Then he called the HOA manager, Eric Delgado. Mr. Delgado, there's a second gate blocking the fire road. Who authorized this? A second gate? Where? 50 feet past the original gate, still on Sarah Chen's property. It's locked. Do you have a key? No, that must be... Sarah must have installed it, so the emergency egress is still inaccessible. But we got the key to the first gate. The first gate opens onto private property that's now blocked by a second gate you can't access. The route is non-functional. Your subdivision is still non-compliant. Silence. Mr. Delgado, I'm updating my report. Sunset Ridge Estates remains in violation of County Code 19403. The original 30-day deadline stands. Insurance carriers will be notified that compliance has not been restored. Tom, said Eric's voice went hollow. What do we do? You need access to the second gate. That means negotiating with Miss Chen, or finding an alternate emergency route and getting it approved, which will take 6 months minimum. We don't have 6 months. Then I suggest you talk to Miss Chen. The insurance cancellations went through on October 30th. 120 homeowners received notices effective in 48 hours. Notice of policy cancellation. Your homeowner's insurance policy will be canceled effective November 1st due to the property's non-compliance with Coconut County Fire Code 19403. Per Arizona insurance regulations, we cannot provide coverage for properties that do not meet county safety codes. The panic was immediate. Tom called me that night. Sarah, people are losing their minds. 3 more home sales just collapsed. Buyers won't touch a house without insurance. 2 families are talking about moving out temporarily until this gets resolved. Property values are dropping 15 to 20%. That's not my fault. I know, but people are scared. And Brad's telling everyone you're the villain. Brad cut my lock and trespassed on my property. He's the one who escalated this. I know that. Karen Wu knows that. But half the subdivision still thinks you're holding them hostage. They can think whatever they want. Brad started this. He can end it by removing the fence and paying the damages. Brad filed an emergency motion with the Coconino County Superior Court on October 31st. Emergency motion to compel access to private property for public safety. The motion argued, Sarah Chen was blocking emergency egress for 120 homes. Lives were at risk in the event of wildfire or emergency. The court should order Sarah to provide immediate gate access. Sarah's refusal was unconscionable and endangering public safety. Miguel called me as soon as he saw the filing. Sarah, Brad's trying to force you to open the gate through the court. The hearing is tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll be there, but we need to file a counter motion. What kind of counter motion? Illegal fence blocking your recorded easement. criminal trespass for cutting your lock, destruction of property. Will request an injunction ordering Brad to remove the fence within 48 hours and pay damages. And will request the court sanction him for filing a frivolous emergency motion. Do it. Miguel filed the counter motion that night. The hearing took place on November 1st at 2 p.m. Coconino County Superior Court. Judge Barbara Hensley presiding. I sat next to Miguel at the plaintiff's table. Brad sat across the aisle with his attorney, a sharp-looking woman named Claire Hobbs. Judge Hensley read both motions, looked up, and said, "This is a mess. Let's start with the facts. Miss Hobbs, your client is asking the court to compel Miss Chen to provide access to a gate on her private property. Why does the court have authority to do that?" Claire stood. Your Honor, the gate provides the only secondary emergency exit for 120 homes. Ms. Chen's refusal to provide access is endangering lives. Under the doctrine of public necessity, the court can compel access to private property when public safety is at stake. And Mr. Rodriguez, your response? Miguel stood. Your Honor, Miss Chen's uncle granted voluntary emergency access in 2202. That access can be revoked. There's no easement, no legal obligation, and no requirement that my client provide a key. Mr. Morrison built a subdivision dependent on access he didn't secure. That's his responsibility, not my client's. Judge Hensley looked at Brad. Mr. Morrison, did you secure legal rights to this gate before building 120 homes? Brad's attorney answered. Your Honor, the gate was installed with the property owner's permission. That's not what I asked. Did you secure a recorded easement or permanent legal access? Claire hesitated. No, Your Honor. The access was granted informally by the previous owner. So you built 120 homes dependent on informal access to private property, and now you're asking the court to force the current owner to continue that access? Your Honor, this is a public safety issue. It's also a property rights issue. Miss Chen owns the land. She has the right to control access. Judge Hensley flipped through the counter motion. And according to this, Mr. Morrison recently blocked Ms. Chen's recorded easement with an illegal fence? Is that true? Brad's face went red. Your Honor, the HOA installed a security fence. Across a recorded right-of-way, the fence was installed on HOA property. Mr. Rodriguez, do you have documentation of the easement? Miguel handed the clerk a folder. Recorded in 1987, Your Honor. Parcel 14C to Parcel 22A. Perpetual vehicular access. Mr. Morrison's fence is blocking it. Judge Hensley reviewed the documents. Mr. Morrison, you blocked a recorded easement? Claire tried to recover. Your Honor, that's a separate issue. No, it's not. It's directly relevant. Mr. Morrison is asking this court to force Miss Chen to provide access through her property while he's simultaneously blocking her legal access through his property. That's breathtaking hypocrisy. She looked at the photos of the cut lock. And you cut Miss Chen's lock and installed your own? Your Honor, it was an emergency. Was there a fire? No, but a flood? An evacuation order? No, Your Honor. Then it wasn't an emergency. It was criminal trespass and destruction of property. Judge Hensley closed the file. Here's my ruling. Mr. Morrison, you will remove the fence blocking Ms. Chen's easement within 48 hours. Failure to comply will result in fines of $1,000 per day until the obstruction is removed. Ms. Chen, you have no legal obligation to provide access to the gate on your property. The access granted by your uncle was voluntary and revocable. If Mr. Morrison wants permanent access, he needs to negotiate an easement and record it with the county. This court will not compel you to provide access. She looked at Brad. Mr. Morrison, you built a subdivision dependent on access you never secured. Your fire code compliance is your responsibility. You should have negotiated permanent legal rights to that gate before you poured the first foundation. The fact that you didn't is not Miss Chen's problem. Motion denied. She banged the gavel. And Mr. Morrison, if you don't remove that fence in 48 hours, I'll hold you in contempt. We're adjourned. Brad walked out of the courtroom pale and silent. Miguel turned to me. You just won everything. What happens now? Brad has to remove the fence or pay $1,000 a day in fines. He has no legal claim to the gate. and he's facing 120 homeowners who just lost their insurance and are going to sue him personally for negligence. Will they win? Probably. He built a subdivision dependent on access he didn't secure. That's developer malpractice. He's looking at millions in liability. I walked out of the courthouse into the cool November afternoon. Brad had cut my lock and thought he'd won. Now he was facing $1,000 a day fines, 120 lawsuits, and a subdivision that was uninsurable and losing value by the hour. And I still had the only key to the second gate. He'd gambled everything. And lost. The fence came down on November 3rd, 48 hours after Judge Hensley's order, exactly on deadline. I was feeding the cattle when I saw the trucks. 2 flatbeds and a backhoe roll past on Red Mesa Road, heading toward the fence line. Brad's crew worked fast. By noon, the steel posts were pulled, the chain link rolled up, the private property signs gone. My easement was clear again. I drove through that afternoon, just to feel it. 12 minutes from my ranch to the highway. No 40-mile detour. No washboard mountain roads. Just smooth asphalt and open access. My road. My right? Restored. But the subdivision was still in crisis. The second gate, the one I'd installed 50 feet inside my property, was still locked. The fire road was still impassable, and 120 homes were still uninsured. The emergency HOA meeting happened on November 4th. Tom Wynn called me that night with the results. Sarah, 118 residents showed up. It was standing room only. People are furious. At me? At Brad. Karen Wu stood up in the first 5 minutes and said, Brad Morrison illegally blocked Sarah Chen's road, cut her lock, trespassed on her property, and got us into this mess. He needs to go. Someone seconded it immediately. The vote was 112-6. Brad's out. Was he there? No. Didn't even show up. Sent an email resignation an hour before the meeting started. Just said, effective immediately, I resign from all HOA positions. Who's running things now? Interim board was elected on the spot. Karen Wu is president. She's a retired attorney, moved to Sunset Ridge 2 years ago. Smart, no nonsense. She said her first priority is restoring insurance and stopping the property value collapse. She wants to meet with you. When? Tomorrow, if you're available. Karen Wu called me at 9 a.m. on November 5th. Ms. Chen? My name is Karen Wu. I'm the new president of the Sunset Ridge HOA. I'd like to meet with you to discuss the gate situation. Are you available this afternoon? I am. Would you prefer to meet at your ranch or somewhere neutral? My ranch is fine. She arrived at 2 p.m. driving a white Toyota Camry, alone. I met her on the porch. She was in her early 60s, gray hair pulled back, calm demeanor. She looked like someone who'd spent a career negotiating settlements and didn't waste time on games. We shook hands and I invited her inside. Miss Chen, I want to start by apologizing on behalf of the HOA. Brad Morrison acted recklessly and illegally. The residents had no idea he'd blocked your road. When we found out, we removed him immediately. What he did was wrong, and I'm sorry. It was the first apology I'd heard from anyone connected to Sunset Ridge in 5 weeks. Thank you. Now, I need to be direct. Our subdivision is in crisis. 120 families have lost their insurance. Property values are dropping. 3 home sales have collapsed. People are scared. We need to restore fire code compliance, and that means we need access to the gate on your property. So I'm asking, what will it take? I've been thinking about this for days. $25,000? A written apology from the HOA acknowledging the illegal fence. A formal easement agreement granting the HOA emergency access through the gate, recorded with the county. The agreement needs to specify that the HOA maintains the fire road, that the HOA is liable for any damage to my property, and that access is revocable if the HOA violates the terms. And Brad Morrison is personally banned from entering my property. Ever. Karen pulled out a notepad and wrote it all down. Anything else? That's it. She looked up. Miss Chen, those terms are fair. I'll bring them to the board tonight. If they approve, and I'm confident they will, how fast can we move? Payment within 48 hours. Easement drafted and recorded within a week, and I'll hand over the key the same day the easement is signed. Deal. We shook hands. The HOA board approved the terms that night. Unanimous vote. No debate. Karen called me at 8 p.m. Miss 10, we're moving forward. The payment will be wired to your account by November 7th. Our attorney is drafting the easement agreement now. We'll have it ready for review by November 9th. Does that work? Yes. Thank you. On behalf of 120 families, thank you. The $25,000 payment hit my account on November 7th at 10:14 a.m. The easement agreement arrived via email on November 9th. Miguel reviewed it. Sarah, this is solid. It's everything you asked for. Emergency access only. HOA maintains the road. Liability stays with them. Revocable if they breach terms. And Brad Morrison is explicitly banned from your property. You should sign it. I signed. The easement was recorded with Coconino County on November 10th. That afternoon, I met Karen Wu at the gate. I handed her a key to the second gate, the industrial lock I'd installed after Brad cut my original lock. This is the only copy, I said. If you lose it, I'll make another, but keep it secure. Emergency use only. Understood? And Ms. Chen? I know this has been difficult. Thank you for working with us. You're not Brad Morrison. You apologized. You negotiated in good faith, and you made it right. That's all I wanted. The fire marshal's re-inspection happened on November 12th. Deputy Fire Marshal Tom Browning tested the route from start to finish. The first gate opened with Brad's lock, still installed, now held by the HOA. The second gate opened with the key Karen had provided. The fire road was clear, graded, accessible. Browning submitted his report the same day. Secondary emergency egress restored and fully functional. Sunset Ridge Estates is in compliance with County Code 19403. Insurance carriers may be notified that compliance has been achieved. The insurance companies reinstated policies on November 15th. 120 families got letters. Notice of policy rent statement. Your homeowner's insurance policy has been reinstated effective immediately. The property is now in compliance with county fire codes. Coverage is restored. Tom called me that night. Sarah, you did it. Insurance is back. Property values are stabilizing. 2 of the collapsed sales are back on track. People are relieved. Good. And Sarah, people know you didn't have to negotiate. You could have held out, let the subdivision collapse, forced Brad to pay 10 times what you asked, but you didn't. People appreciate that. I didn't do this to hurt your families, Tom. I did it to stop Brad from stealing my ranch. We know. And we're grateful. But Brad's nightmare was just beginning. On November 18th, 37 Sunset Ridge homeowners filed lawsuits against Brad Morrison personally. The claims included property value loss during the insurance crisis, estimated 1520% decline during the 30-day period, emotional distress from the threat of losing insurance and being unable to sell collapsed home sales, 3 families who'd had accepted offers that fell through, moving and storage costs, 2 families who temporarily relocated while the crisis unfolded. Total claims, $840,000. Brad's attorney tried to negotiate. By February 22-6, Brad had settled for $310,000, paid from personal assets. His company didn't have liability insurance that covered willful misconduct, so the cost came out of his own pocket. The county also hit him with fines for the illegal fence obstruction, $33,000. 33 days at $1,000 per day, from the date Judge Hensley issued the order until the fence was fully removed and inspected. Legal fees between defending the emergency motion, the criminal trespass case, and the homeowner lawsuits ran $95,000. Total cost of blocking my road, $438,000. Plus his reputation. Morrison Development lost 2 pending contracts with other municipalities after word spread about the Sunset Ridge debacle. Builders didn't want to work with a developer who'd endangered 120 families over a personal vendetta. By March 2006, Brad had quietly dissolved Morrison Development and left Coconino County. I kept the second gate. It was on my property. The easement granted access through it, but ownership remained with me. Karen Wu never asked me to remove it. The HOA had the key, the fire marshal had approved the route, and the subdivision was compliant. The gate stayed. A reminder, not of the fight, but of the principle. that property rights aren't negotiable, that bullies don't always win, and that sometimes the person you try to trap is the one holding the key to your survival. I sat on my porch one evening in late November, watching the sunset over the painted desert. My easement was restored. My $25,000 payment had covered legal fees, detour costs, and then some. Brad Morrison was gone, banned from my property, bankrupted by his own arrogance, run out of the county he'd developed for 20 years, and my ranch was still mine. 85 acres, senior water rights, 60 head of cattle, peace. Brad had offered me $2.3 million, thinking I'd panic and sell cheap. Instead, he'd lost $438,000, his company's reputation, and any chance of ever getting my land. He'd thought leverage was about size, about money, about control, but leverage isn't about what you have. It's about what the other side can't live without. Brad couldn't live without the gate. And I had the only key. That was all the leverage I needed. 18 months after the settlement, I was sitting on my porch watching a group of tourists from Phoenix learn to rope cattle. It was April 2027, spring in the high desert, wildflowers blooming across the south pasture, clear blue sky stretching forever. The agritourism business I'd started 6 months ago was doing better than I'd expected. Ranch tours on Saturday mornings, farm-to-table dinners twice a month, corporate team-building events for tech companies looking to get their employees out of air-conditioned offices and into the real Arizona, grossing $180,000 a year now, on top of the cattle operation. The ranch was thriving, and I'd never been happier. Karen Wu stopped by that afternoon, driving the same white Camry she had arrived in 18 months earlier. "Sarah, I brought you something." She handed me a bottle of wine, a nice Pinot Noir from Sedona. "What's the occasion?" Sunset Ridge just hit a milestone. 0 HOA complaints, 0 violations, 0 drama for 12 consecutive months. The board wanted to thank you for working with us instead of destroying us. I laughed. "I didn't do you any favors, Karen. I just stopped Brad from stealing my ranch." "I know, but you could have held out. Could have let the insurance lapse, let property values collapse, forced Brad to pay 10 times what you asked. A lot of people would have. You didn't. Once Brad was gone and we came to you in good faith, you negotiated fairly. That mattered. How's the subdivision doing?" "Great. Property values recovered fully by last summer. We've had 6 homes sell in the past year, all at or above asking price. The new HOA board runs professionally, transparent budgets, regular meetings, no surprises. And the gate works perfectly. We test it quarterly, maintain the fire road, and everyone knows the rules. It's exactly what it should have been from the start." "And Brad?" Karen's expression darkened. "Gone. Dissolved Morrison Development in March 2006. Sold his remaining properties at a loss to cover the lawsuit settlements. Moved to Nevada, I heard. Trying to start over in commercial real estate, but his reputation followed him. No one wants to work with the developer who endangered 120 families over a personal grudge. Does he still owe money? About $127,000 in unpaid settlements. 3 families are still chasing him through the courts, but I doubt they'll ever see it. He's judgment-proof at this point. No assets, no income. He destroyed himself." We sat in silence for a moment. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you ever feel bad about what happened to him?" I thought about it. "No. Why not?" "Because Brad made every choice that led to his destruction. He offered me $2.3 million for land worth $4.8 million. I refused. He could have walked away. Instead, he blocked my road, cut my lock, trespassed on my property, and tried to force me into submission. He gambled that I'd break. He lost. That's not my fault. That's his." Karen nodded. "That's what I told the board. Some people still think you were too harsh. I remind them, Brad started the fight. You just finished it." A week later, I got a call from a developer I didn't know. His name was Marcus Chen. No relation. He ran a residential development company based in Scottsdale. "Miss Chen, I'm calling about your ranch. I know you turned down Brad Morrison's offer a few years ago, but I wanted to reach out and see if you'd consider selling now. I'm prepared to offer $5.8 million for the full 85 acres. No games, no pressure. Just a fair offer for prime land. Mr. Chen, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested. This is home. I understand. But if you ever change your mind, I'd love to talk. And Ms. Chen, I want you to know, I've done my research. I know what happened with Brad Morrison. That was unconscionable. If we ever did work together, I'd never block your access, cut your locks, or play those kinds of games. I believe in negotiating in good faith. I laughed. That's a good policy, Mr. Chen. Learned it the hard way. I watched Brad Morrison destroy his career over pride. I'm not making that mistake. Smart man. Thank you for your time, Miss Chen. If you ever want to talk, you have my number. He hung up. I sat there, looking out at the 85 acres Uncle Raymond had left me. $5.8 million. A year ago, the appraisal had come back at $5.4 million, up from $4.8 million before the fight with Brad. The agritourism business, the expanded cattle operation, and the senior water rights had all increased the value. I could sell, walk away with nearly $6 million, retire to the coast, travel the world, never work another day in my life. But this ranch wasn't about money. It was about legacy, about the land Uncle Raymond had worked for 40 years, about the life I'd built here. Brad had tried to take it, and he'd lost everything trying. That evening, I walked to the north boundary and checked the gate. Both gates, actually. The first one, the one Brad had relocked after cutting mine, was still there, maintained by the HOA per our agreement. The second one, the one I'd installed 50 feet inside my property line, stood solid and secure, the industrial lock gleaming in the fading sunlight. The fire road was clear, graded, ready for emergency use if it was ever needed. But it hadn't been needed. Not once in 18 months. No fires. No floods. No evacuations. Just a quiet road through my land, serving its purpose, under my control. I pulled the key from my pocket, the same key I'd handed to Karen Wu in November 2005. Well, a copy of it. I still had the original, just in case. I thought about Brad sometimes. Not with anger. Not anymore. Just with a kind of distant curiosity. What had he been thinking? Did he really believe he could cut off my access, steal my leverage, and force me to sell? Did he not realize that the gate, the one thing his entire subdivision depended on, was on my property? Or had he known and just assumed I'd never use it against him? Either way, he'd miscalculated. Badly. He'd thought leverage was about size. About money. About being the bigger developer with the deeper pockets and the longer history in the county. But leverage isn't about any of that. Leverage is about controlling the one thing the other side can't live without. Brad couldn't live without the gate. And I had the key. That was all the leverage I needed. People sometimes asked if I felt bad about what happened to the 120 families in Sunset Ridge. I didn't. They weren't my victims. They were Brad's. He built a subdivision dependent on access through my land, without securing permanent rights. He endangered their insurance, their property values, their ability to sell, all because he wanted to bully me into selling my ranch. I didn't cause that crisis. Brad did. I just refused to let him get away with it. And when the new HOA came to me, apologized, negotiated in good faith, and offered fair terms, I worked with them. The families got their insurance back. Their property values recovered. Their lives returned to normal. Brad lost everything. That wasn't cruelty. That was justice. I sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the painted desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Uncle Raymond had left me this ranch 7 years ago. 85 acres of high desert grassland, senior water rights, and a legacy 40 years in the making. Brad Morrison had tried to steal it by cutting off my access, thinking I'd panic and sell cheap. What he didn't realize, what he couldn't have known until it was too late, was that I held the key to his entire subdivision's survival. He could have worked with me, could have removed the fence, apologized, negotiated like an adult. Instead, he broke into my property, destroyed my lock, and tried to force me into submission. It cost him $438,000. It cost him his company. It cost him everything. And I still had my ranch, still had the key, still had the power. Brad had controlled nothing. I'd controlled everything. And the key, the literal physical key to a gate on my land, had been the difference between his victory and his destruction. Some people think leverage is about size, money, or power. It's not. Leverage is about controlling the one thing the other side can't live without. Brad needed the gate. I had the key. And that was all the leverage I ever needed. I finished my coffee, locked up the house, and walked out to check on the cattle one last time before bed. The ranch was quiet, peaceful. Mine, exactly the way Uncle Raymond had left it. And exactly the way it would stay.